Greetings to you and welcome to our daily Devo for Monday, the 11th of December. Today, our devotion is entitled A Lesson on Prayer from the Landscape. Matthew and Mark will have passages cited here. A lesson on prayer from the landscape. Matthew 21:22. If you believe, you will receive whatever you ask for in prayer. Prayer is more than a wish list. It is more than a pious spiritual exercise. Prayer is a powerful tool. This is the second lesson Jesus taught from the landscape that day because the disciples missed the first. A hungry Jesus spied a distant fig tree, that had sprouted leaves. In spring, this meant it should also have produced early season figs. It hadn't. When Jesus was close enough to see the quote-unquote hypocrisy of the tree that mirrored the hypocrisy he had seen in Jerusalem, he caused it to wither. The disciples missed the connection, however, because they were amazed at how quickly the tree withered. Matthew 21:20. Their amazement signaled a lack of confidence in their own prayer life. So Jesus quickly pivoted to a new lesson, lifting their eyes from the fig tree to the horizon. The next lesson for that day was linked to a specific mountain and sea, likely the Herodium and the Dead Sea. The Herodium was a palace fortress built by Herod the Great, perched on rising terrain. As Jesus and the disciples crossed the Mount of Olives on their way back to Jerusalem from Bethany, it was hard to miss. Even though it was 7.5 miles away, this mountain soared over the other terrain features. It grabbed the disciples' attention for several reasons. It was tall. The palace included a 5-story hall and an 8-story tower. It was round, unlike other buildings of this era or most things in nature. And it had a history of being moved. Herod draped the circular foundations of the upper palace with a 32-degree slope of soil and rock. To get those materials, Herod cut off the top of the adjacent mountain and moved it to the Herodium. It was an amazing feat of engineering and stunning piece of architecture. But this, quote-unquote, this mountain symbolized something more sinister. For peasants, it embodied the Roman occupation and all the social injustices that attended it. But what could they do? They were powerless peasants. Jesus' response? Pray. They had a powerful tool they were underestimating. They could do so much more than Jesus had done to the fig tree. They could say to this mountain, go throw yourself into the Dead Sea. The place Jewish tradition said was the proper place for all pagan items. And it would happen. That is the power of prayer, says our author in our book. Interesting stories. They're, when you first read them, it's a scratch your head kind of situation. But Jesus was always making a point, and that's what we need to understand about these kind of teachings, about parables in the scriptures. They're not meant to have every single detail of a story or a situation represent something, stand for something, teach for something. The reality in these kinds of teachings, and especially parables, is a point to be made. There's something that is the main focus of that story. And we need to make sure we're paying attention to the setting. Who's Jesus specifically speaking to? I appreciate our author's desire to make sure we understand the location, the scenery, some of the history of that place, because it all lends something to what Jesus is saying and why he's saying it. And so in this passage, it's a lesson on prayer. We often feel helpless, don't we? We can't change the situation. We can't change other people's hearts. We can't meet our bills this month. Whatever the powerless situation we feel ourselves in, we have prayer. We can cast all our care on him because he cares for us. We can go before him asking, seeking, and knocking, knowing that he loves us, knowing that he will be there for us. Now, he may not answer things the way we want him to, but he will deal with the situation on our behalf. And lots of times we will be so surprised at the outcome that hopefully in that surprise, we're beginning to learn, what's the word I want? Not journey, but that's all that comes to mind. The journey of prayer, the interesting path that God takes in putting us in a place, calling out to him, to meet us, to help us, to show us the way. And we may have a number of possibilities we think is the best way that God could do it, or we think we know how he's going to do it, and completely out of left field, here comes another answer. Here comes another way for that prayer to be answered and for us to learn and to grow in our faith. People without power do have access. Well, let's put it this way. People without power on this earth or a way to resolve the issues here have an advocate, Jesus Christ, who is before the throne, who does intercede for us there in that place. And so there's never anyone or anything that he cannot handle, that he will not respond to for us, as by faith we seek him out. That's the power of prayer. That's the joy of prayer. That's the peace and hope of prayer. It's a powerful, powerful thing that by his grace, God gives us the privilege to do. Blessings to you today on this Monday.